Okay, so I was telling you that this communication and presentation skills is the practical ending of the first subject that you read in the first semester. And there is a whiteboard. Right. Am I sharing the whiteboard with you? Can you see the whiteboard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is the whiteboard. I was talking about communication and presentation skills, right? So the course name shows that it is basically the practical ending of the first subject that you read. Communication is how to communicate, how to interact with people, and how to conversate with people. And presentation skills is it's not only that you come in front of people and present something. It is the presentation both in written and in spoken communication, that how can you present yourself in a best possible way. Presentation is always you might have heard this thing that uh, हम कहते हैं ना कि the paper was presented so beautifully. So that even it is in written communication. Presentation is not only that you present in front of people. It is the presentation of yourself. It is the presentation of something in writing, and it is the presentation of something in speaking, and it is also presenting yourself as like the body language also matters in presentation skills. So in this particular course, there are course contents that I'll be sharing with you, but I want to write some major contents that I'll be teaching. These are the major contents that I'll be teaching in this semester. So please be with me. Look to the whiteboard. I'm writing the course, the major contents that I'll be teaching. The first is that to start with the definition of communication, that what is communication, what is the process, and what are the components of communication. So starting with communication, and over here we will be discussing the process, the components, the types, and then actually the body language, which is a very important topic in communication, because body language is also communication. It's not we say that if we are having a particular gesture or a facial expression or any eye contact, that also gives us a thought, and that also tells us so many things. Okay, so the action tells more than the words. So that's why we can say that body language is also communication, or a type of communication which we call non-verbal communication. After that, we will be talking about meetings, that how can we conduct meetings, and then how can we write the minutes of the meeting. So this is actually basically in communication and presentation skills. It is something practical. How can you conduct meeting? What are the types of meetings, and how can you write the minutes of meeting? So minutes of writing minutes of meeting is not only the job of a clerk. It can be like at any time you can be asked at any forum, like when you get to any forum, when you are dropped in any forum or any organization. So you can be asked to write the minutes of the meeting. Then how can you write the minutes of the meeting, right? So we will be discussing those things. Now, after that, business letters. Business letters in any forum, letters are always there. It's like still prevalent, though we say that the email has replaced these letters, but still if we see the format of writing the emails is also a business letter, right? But the medium is changed, like that is an online one, and this one, business letters are written on the paper, but having same format. We will be discussing the formats of emails as well, that how can you write the messages of the emails, and then the types and structure. Resume is another topic. Resume or resume, both the way you can pronounce it. Or we can also call it CV, but there is a difference in CV and resume. We will be discussing it in detail. How can you develop your resume? How can you format your CV? While when you get your degree, obviously you will be having the chance to make your resume and drop it somewhere where you want to get a job. So, how to formulate that resume or CV? Then after that, we have the job interviews, right? Job interviews and what are how to prepare for those job interviews. So there are different types of job interviews depending on the forum, depending on the organization where you want to apply. So if it is very administrative, sometimes they are very having a strict interviews. They are having very structured interviews. Sometimes we have unstructured interviews. So how to deal with that? How to be successful in those job interviews? After that, it's the oral presentation. Oral presentation is, I think, it's the most important topic for all the students in UVT, that how can you present in front of people, or if there is a body of audience sitting in front of you, how can you present yourself? So there are two things that can be discussed in oral presentation. Is it's basically the words or the choice of words that you choose, and I'm saying, I mean, like the diction, I mean the words that you choose. And after that, and there is another thing which is the body language, that if you the choice of the words is one, if you have the correspondence between the body language and the choice of the words, it will be a better presentation. So I'll be discussing this oral presentation. Then the types and the preparation, how can you prepare for presentation planning, and then how can you deliver. So over here again, I'll be discussing some non-verbal communication, which is the non-verbal delivery. So the non-verbal delivery also matters. And then the public speaking. Again, it's the public speaking is also the presentation, that how in front of a public you can present, like the orators and the politicians, the activists. And you see those people who are more persuasive, because the choice of the words are very important, and the planning that they do before going into the presentation. Sometimes it can be a very impromptu presentation, but they know the skill, that how they persuade the people. So these orators and these politicians and these activists have a particular way of persuading the people in their presentations. Then the proposal writing. Proposal writing. Proposal writing, again, it's important for you people, because in seventh semester or in eighth semester you will be getting many projects. So are you listening to me, or I'm talking Abby?
Yes,
Yes,
madam. Yes.
yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. So then it is the
Yes, ma'am.
proposal writing. Proposal writing, like in seventh semester or in eighth semester, you will be getting your mini or major projects. So for those projects, then you are asked to write proposals. Those proposals are actually to persuade your supervisors or organizers in order to provide you with the basic facilities that you need in conducting that particular research or that particular problem. So that is the proposal writing. How can you write the proposal? There are short proposals, there are long proposals, depending on the idea, depending if it is a broader one. So how can you persuade a person, persuade your supervisor especially? So there are two types of proposal writing. One is business proposal, the other is research proposal. So research proposal are those proposals which you write for your supervisors or the people who are mostly sit in the academic things. Okay? And business proposals can be even that proposal when you want to make a society in UBT, or you want to make any organization in any other department or any forum, and you write that we are going to have this to the higher authority, that we want to have this forum or this society or whatever the case is just an example. that then if they allow, so your proposals are accepted. How to write those proposals, how to persuade the people, again, it's the practical thing. So there are business proposals and research proposals. And the last one is the report writing. Report writing is why I teach report writing after proposal writing, because there are two types of reports again: short reports and long reports. Long reports are those reports which are written for the researches. So when we have research proposals and we persuade the organizers and the supervisors to allow us to do the research, after that, when we conduct the research, we are asked to write your research. So that written part is basically you are making the report, and that report writing is the long report. Short reports are sometimes even you might have seen the notices on the notice board when there is a notification for the invitation of something, invitation of the staff, invitation of the students. तो उसको भी हम report बोल सकते हैं. That's a memo report. So we are having different types of reports: memo report, letter report, long reports, and short reports. We will be discussing them in detail. So these are the major contents that I'll be teaching in my course, and I hope you will follow, you will go along with me. But I will tell you, I'm telling you one thing, that you should go along with me, but there is one thing, that you should start reading newspapers, because you have much time now. Like, there is no such thing that you are coming to university, you prepare for something. You're just there at homes, and you might have some social media. I mean, like, you will be using Facebook or any other social forum. So you can join, like, it's now very easy. You can join any newspaper, any English newspaper, and you can search the opinion parts and the article parts, and you can read it there. So it's very important for writing all these things. It's very important to learn the vocabulary first. And it was the basic part, or the basic topic in English composition and comprehension, to make your vocabulary or to build your vocabulary. So I hope you have read that particular topic, that how can you build your vocabulary. If not, I can tell you one thing, that if you give 20 or 30 minutes of your whole life or day, I mean, like, the day, see, we are sitting at homes and we are doing nothing except listening to the classes. So why not to give 20 or 30 minutes to reading? And that reading should be from the newspapers, because we have no other such suitable thing, right? So I would suggest you people to start reading from the newspaper, especially Dawn or the news. So you can join it, you can like the page, and you will get the notification for the particular opinions that you like. उसमें से when you start the opinions for the first time, you will get it difficult, and you will feel it's so difficult to read, because there are vocabulary which you don't know, जिसके meanings आपको नहीं पता. So when you read, uh, and when you come across a word that you do not know the meaning of, try to search it in Google. And everybody has his or her own cell phone. So you can Google it at that time, but do not forget to click on the speaker button, because there are now words, they are becoming the vocabulary of English language. So we cannot even rely on the spellings of the words, because when we rely on the spelling, sometimes there are words that we pronounce, we feel that the pronunciation is according to the spelling, but that's not, because in English it's like, you cannot rely on the spellings. You have to search for the pronunciation, right? Because it's very important for the spoken communication. So when you have an oral presentation, you should have a proper pronunciation as well. So please make a promise today. I would like you people to make a promise today to give 20 minutes of your whole day to reading newspaper. And if you feel that you cannot read the whole article or the whole opinion, at least read it half and leave the half part to the second day. And when you search some of the words, try to write those words on the sticky notes. And if you have a separate room, you can stick those sticky notes on the wall. And when you get some time, try to review them back. If you are not having any separate room, try to make a wall separate for yourself and tell the people that this is your wall or this is your portion. So just stick the sticky notes on that. Try to write the meanings and the words on those sticky notes and stick it on that particular wall or portion that you have. So when you get time, try to read them. Try to read them. So I hope you will do it. And after 1 month, you will see, or after 2 months, you will see you will have a bulk of vocabulary. So after 4 long years, you will have much vocabulary to understand and write things, right? So there is no shortcut, and there is no magical shortcut that you can learn English or you can learn this particular language, or no teacher can inject something in your mind. It's you and you that when you start reading and struggling for something, you can just learn it. So we can guide you some of the things, but we cannot inject most of the knowledge in your mind. It is you. Because in this whole semester, we can guide you only. We cannot just give you much time, because it's not a annual system, it's just a semester system, and again it's online. So much time is consumed on these documentations and all those stuff. So kindly start reading. It's very important for you people, and it will help you a lot in the rest of your life. So I hope you will do it. Please make a promise today. Okay, so these are the course contents. I hope it is clear. The course contents are clear. So starting with the communication, which is the first topic, communication. What is communication? Do you know? Do you have any idea about communication? I'm asking all of you.
Ma'am, communication is something to interact with others.
Very good, Urusa. Very good, Urusa. Anybody else?
To convey
Anybody else?
to convey our message to the next person.
Hmm. Muzammil, do you want to say something? Anybody else who can talk?
And exchanging of information by
Okay,
speaking or
exchange. Okay, exchanging of information. So both of you are right that communication is the imparting or exchanging of information from one person to another or from one place to another. So, or it's like sharing your thoughts or emotions with other people. But as we say that communication is it's basically a process. As in the start of the lecture, I said that we would be discussing communication as a process, because there is a difference in a process and a phenomena. Okay, so communication is a process, it's not a phenomena. When we talk about phenomena, that's something which happens, right? So it doesn't happen. Communication doesn't happen. It is a process in which, and in the process, when we discuss processes that involve some participants as well, and they are having some components, and they start from one point and reaches the same point. So process is always starts from one point, reaches the same points, or maybe there can be blockages in between, but the process starts from one point and tries to reach that same point. In between the process, there are always components that are involved. There can be something which are transferred, there can be some participants who are involved in that. Again, if we see communication as also a process, and there are participants who are involved, and those participants are actually the people. And what is the thing that is transferred? It is basically the message. It can be the emotions, it can be the feelings, it can be an idea, or whatever the case is. So that particular thing is transferred from one person to another. And though these definitions are well valid, that it is the exchange of information, but these definition link the process or the element of process. So there is one particular professor. Her name is Jennifer Slake. Jennifer Slake. She is a professor at Michigan Tech University. She is alive, right? She defined this communication for her students, and she says that it is a process. It is a process of creating and interpreting messages that elicit a response. So you can see in this definition, though it's a very short one, but you can see it is a process of creating and interpreting messages that elicit a response. So we can clearly see that there are components, and it is a process as well. So from this definition, we can see the components are the sender, because creation is the job of the sender. There are there is receivers, because interpretation is the job of the receiver. And there are two processes that are involved. One is the creation, and the other is the interpretation, or we can also call creation as encoding and interpretation as decoding. I'll be discussing encoding and decoding as well. Number 2A3 is the message, right? Or we can also call it a text, right? And the fourth one is the channel, because there is always a channel through which we communicate. How can we create a message? How can we interpret? There is always a channel for it. And the greater channel is basically the language, or we can also call the channel as the medium through which we communicate, and it can be particularly the language. There are also sub-medium media or channels, and they can be the spoken or the written communication or the body language. So it depends on the channel, through which channel. I mean, it is a body language, whether it is spoken or written communication. But the most important channel is the language itself through which we communicate. See, I'm having an idea in my mind, and I'm creating a message. I mean, like, I'm speaking through a language that is English language, or sometimes the Urdu as well. So I'm creating messages, and I'm imparting through a particular way or a medium, that is the language. And then we have the feedback. Feedback, we can see it is a response. So response is the feedback. And then we have another, we have these 5 components as the components which are involved in the process of communication, but there is an external component which affects this process um, uh, greatly, and that is the context. And context is, though it's a very external component, but it is a very important component to know and to see that, because sometimes when people talk, they do not realize the context. So when they are talking, the choice of the words is different, so people feel differently about him or about the person, that how he or she is speaking. Because they do not realize the context. So we will be talking about the context as well. So starting with the sender and the receiver, as I said, that there are yet other two processes which are involved in this process of communication, and one is the job of the sender, that he or she is responsible for encoding, which is eventually we can call it creation or creating. How we can also call the sender as the encoder. You might know that what is encoding, right? It is like when you give a code to something, when you give a language to something, when you give a name to something, that is called encoding. So why the sender is called as encoder, or this process as encoding or creation? Because as you see, I'm having an idea in my mind about the communication, but that is not that is in my mind, right? Idea is always in the abstract form. So when you give that idea as a concrete form, that that you can transfer it, I mean, like when I'm speaking, so I'm giving it a concrete form, concrete in a sense that I can transfer it through a language. So I'm basically encoding or creating the text. So when you transfer the idea in the form of a text, it is basically encoding or giving it a code. So it can be in any language, it can be English or it can be other medium, it can be spoken or it can be written, or sometimes it can be body language as well, right? So and the sender is called the encoder. The receiver is called the decoder, or we can also call it as decoding, or it is the interpretation or interpreting the text, or decoding or decoder. Why decoder? Because when he or she receives the same text, that is what was encoded by the sender, the job of the receiver is to deconstruct the text and get the idea back, which is embedded in that particular text. So, and to give a feedback to the receiver, to the sender again. What is a message, by the way? Can anybody tell me what is a message? Jalal Khan, can you tell me what is a message? I'll be asking
Ma'am,
you questions.
anything
Sorry.
that we want to convey to somebody.
Okay, that is a message. Muhammad Isa Khan,
Yes.
could you please?
To convey or express your idea and
Hmm, it is a message. Okay. Muhammad Abbas Amir, what's the full name?
to convey your idea, thought, and feeling to other people.
It is a text. No, what is a text? That is conveying your idea or thought or whatever. That is actually the process of communication. Text क्या है? Okay. Sometimes we say that.
coding.
Sorry, who is speaking? I'm sorry. Muhammad Isa.
Ma'am, it is a coding message and the receiver
Mm,
decode it.
okay. Okay. And so text is, it's basically not only the written one that we write, तो हम कहते हैं कि ये text है, or we can say that sometime we write or type in our cell phones or laptop or whatever the medium is. It's not only that. It can be whatever we speak, whatever we write, and whatever we do or act is the text. Because a simple gesture or an eye contact or the blinking of the eye, or even when you bring wrinkles on your forehead, is also a text, because that tells us something, either you are confused or either you are angry or something like that. And even the blush that you have on your face, it's basically an expression which we can call it do or action, or it is like to act in that way. It is also a message because it tells us or gives us a thought. So anything that gives us an idea or a thought is basically a text. Okay? So whatever we speak, whatever we write, or whatever we do is basically a text. It's not only the written one, it's not only the spoken one, or it's not only the action, right? And channel is the medium, or it's the language, feedback is the response, but context is basically the environment which affects this process of communication. And how it affects is, you might have seen when you talk to your teachers, you have a different type of language. You cannot say something that, or you cannot use those languages or slang words that you use in front of your friends, or in front of the youngsters, or the people who are junior to you. So people who are senior to you are um, people who are at higher level. Well, you are having a forum or you are working in an organization. So people who are higher in level, you cannot talk to them in the way you talk to your friends, because there the context is changed. There the age matters, there the hierarchy matters, and there the status matters a lot. When you talk to your teacher, do you use the same language that you use in front of your peers, in front of your friends, and in front of your colleagues? No, not at all, because the context is changed. The person is changed. So context can be personal. I mean, like, you talk to whom? Talking to your mother or father, or talking to your parents is different from when you speak or communicate with your sister and brother and people who are with you at the same level at home. So you see, because the context has changed, you cannot use those vocabulary. When we do not realize the context, it can be depending, context can depend on the intimacy as well. So when you have an intimate relationship with the people, you can use those words, but you cannot use it regularly, because that is an environment of intimacy then. And it depends on the relationships as well. But again, if we see, it can be physical as well. When you are sitting in an office and there are people who belong to other fields, and you, like, for example, when you talk to a doctor, you will have a different context. When you talk to a lawyer, you will have a different context. And then again, if you're talking to an engineer, you will have a different context. So the context changes, and the communication or the process of communication changes, because either sender is at higher level or either the receiver is at higher level, right? So the difference of the status, the difference of the person, the difference of the age matters a lot. I have seen so many students, when they do not realize the context, they will talk to their teachers as if they are talking to their friends. So they don't look good, or we do not feel something good about those students when they talk to their teachers in that way. Because intimacy is something that is like, when allowed, you can use those words, but when you aren't allowed, you cannot use those words, you cannot use something like that. I have seen so many students that when we were having face-to-face classes, when they come to us, they would, like, when they speak Pashto, and they would say madam ta. So there is a difference in madam tha or thaso, because you have to use the words correctly. So see, like, I'm not saying that you should call me taso or tha or whatever, but I'm just giving you an example that when you do not realize the context, that communication doesn't look good or feel pleasant or pleasurable, right? So try to, when you are communicating with the people, try to be to realize the context. ठीक है? ये बहुत important है, क्योंकि those people who do not focus on such thing, actually their communication is not persuasive. So people who realize the context, they are actually so persuasive in their context or in their communication. So let me draw something for you people. That is, for example, it is a process. As I said, that communication is a process. So if this is the sender, sorry, I'm so bad at drawing, but I'm trying to make a person. This is a person, one person who is the sender actually. So I will write only S, right? So this is a sender, and this is a cyclic process, right? And here we have a receiver. Receiver is having a big headed receiver we have, right? So this is a receiver and this is the sender. So the job of the sender is to encode the text, and there is an idea in his or her mind. And what is this encoding is that when the sender give it a code, or either it can be spoken communication or written communication, either he or she writes it on a page or speak it out, the idea that he is having in his mind or her mind. So I will write only I, which is an idea, and this process is called encoding. So I'll write only E, that the idea is transferred in the form of a text, right? So I'll write only T, which is text. So this transferring of the idea in the form of a text, so I mean like when giving the idea a code or giving it a language, right? So it is called encoding. And when that encoded text so when that idea is encoded, that is called a text, and that text is then transferred through a channel or a medium to the receiver. And the job of the receiver is to decode this text or deconstruct and give a feedback again to the sender. So the job of this receiver or the decoder is to deconstruct this text and get the idea back, idea ले लेता है, and यहाँ पे it is like the decoding process. I mean, like deconstructing the text again, getting the idea back. So we cannot say that it is a very slow process. It can be a very rapid process. The way I'm talking, I'm just encoding within seconds, and I'm transferring it to you through a language. If you are getting my text, so it means that you are decoding, and you are the way I asked you to give me a yes or a no answer. So that yes or no from you people is actually a feedback to me, for me. So you see, it is a very rapid process, but it is the process of communication, where we see the sender is responsible for encoding, transferring the text to the receiver, and the receiver decoders gets the idea back, and it can be a very rapid thing, right? But within these receiver and these participants, within them, or this whole process along this line, we can see there can be so many things, and those so many things depend on the context, the position of this receiver, the position of this sender and this receiver, the way the channel, and how can you encode that. It depends on this particular see, this particular line. Okay, along this line, what is the context? Whether the receiver or the sender is at higher or lower level, depending on that idea. It is basically the context or background is here, right? I hope it is clear that it is the process. अगर नहीं है clear तो मुझे बता दें.
Clear, ma'am.
Okay. तो यहाँ तक clear है तो ठीक है. I'll start with another topic. So this was the process of communication. Then there are so many types of communication. I mean, as I said, that we can have different medium. So depending on the medium or the channel, we have three types of communication basically. And those three types of communication are um, spoken communication, written communication, and the body language. So these are the three types of communication on the basis of its channel. But when we squeeze our these three types of communication, we can have two major types of communication. You see, spoken communication or written communication are those communication where we use words. But in the spoken, we utter those words, and in the written, we write those words. So when we communicate our idea, through speaking, it is basically spoken communication. When we communicate our idea through writing, that is called written communication. But both of them are using words. So we can say one is verbal. Both of them is verbal communication. Verbal communication, or the other one is the non-verbal communication, because the body language is actually that communication where we do not use any word, but it is basically the facial expressions, the gestures, the postures, the eye contact, or when we jerk our shoulders, when we blink our eyes, when we have some wrinkles on the foreheads, wrinkles on the face, okay? Wrinkles along with the muscles of your mouth, right? So that is basically the non-verbal communication, because all these communication gives us a thought. So if you are laughing or if you are smiling, it means that there is a difference in the idea. If you have some wrinkles on your forehead, because that shows us something. If you are silent, even the silence is a communication, or it's a non-verbal communication. In when somebody is silent or they do not want to talk, either they aren't interested in the idea, or either they don't want to talk to you or the person who is talking to them, or him or her. So that is again giving us a thought. So verbal communication are those is that communication where we use, or when a message or an information is exchanged or communicated through words, it is called verbal communication. So it takes place through face-to-face conversation or group discussions or counseling or interviews or radio or television, phone calls, memos, reports, letters, notes, emails, or whatever the case is. Like it can be written or spoken, both of them. So sharing your thoughts through words is basically verbal communication. Non-verbal communication is that communication when a message or information is communicated without using any word, but it is like communicated through the body language. And in the body language, we can have and through the body language, sorry, in the body language we have gestures, postures, facial expressions, eye contact, silence, proximity. Proximity is basically it is the nearness, or actually it is taken from touch. And the tone of your voice and the pitch of your voice as well. Okay, so these are the things that we count in the non-verbal communication, because the gestures that you make, I mean, when you talk to somebody and they jerk their shoulder, it means that either they don't know and they actually say that they don't know about this thing. So, and postures is basically the position of your body. It tells us something about our personality. So the body language, you should be very careful about your body language, that what facial expressions are you making in front of people, especially in interviews. Because in conducting or in we can say attending the interviews, you have to be very careful about the facial expressions and the postures and the gestures, because any gesture that you make or any facial expressions that you give over there, it can count in so many things, because you might have heard that action speaks more than words. So eye contact, again, if you stare somebody, they can be very unpleasurable something, or it can be a very unpleasant thing, so staring. But there is one thing more. So eye contact is, as I said, that it's communication. And silence, again, proximity.
Ma'am, dressing, I mean uniform. Uniform.
Sorry, Amjad, you want to say something? Eye contact, silence, proximity, touch, tone, and pitch of your voice. Okay? So, and this physical proximity means that you keep a distance with the people. So, with the public, you have a different
No, ma'am.
proximity. I mean, like,
I was saying that uniform is also.
exactly the dress code. Yeah, the dress code is also very important. It's your appearance is very important, and it tells you so many things. Appearance both matter इसलिए भी करता है. You might have seen that after 9/11, the American who see a person is wearing a beard and he is having a this kameez shalwar, right? So this dress code is actually telling them something else, right? So about the terrorism. But that is actually another thing. That is actually something political. Okay? Your dress code matters a lot in an event. For example, if you are wearing a dress code that is for the office and you go to a walima function, so you will be looking different. Or, and if you are going to the office and wearing a walima dress, so that will be so awkward. So the dress code matters, or your appearance matters a lot. So people, I'm not saying that people who wear a good stuff or maybe some branded stuff, that's not the case. Actually, you have to wear something, you have to put on something like a dress code. You should have a sense of the dress code, that and which environment, which context, which dress code should be for. Okay? So your appearance should be according to that particular environment. uh, and silence, it's also non-verbal communication. Okay? So these are actually the verbal and non-verbal communication. There are so many types of communication: graphene communication, informal or formal. बहुत सारे हैं when you Google this particular term, types of communication. So you can come across a list of types of communication. But actually, these two are very important to learn. And there are other two that I'll tell you, but you have to search them, that intrapersonal and interpersonal communication. This interpersonal communication is also very important, and it can be related to body language as well, or the thoughts you have. You might have heard about psychology, that when you talk to yourself, you might have noticed this thing. Do you talk to yourself when you are alone? I'm
Yes,
asking
ma'am.
this.
A lot,
I
many
do.
times.
Yeah, many times, exactly. Many times we talk to ourselves when we are alone. And sometimes when I talk to myself, sometimes I speak it out, right? So I speak it out, and when I see that if somebody comes, they would say that, am I a pagal person that I'm talking to myself? So actually, that is intrapersonal communication, that when people talk to themselves, it is intrapersonal, right? Something within one thing. That is called intra. So intrapersonal means that when you communicate to yourself. And the best example is when you are preparing for any presentation and when you stand in front of a mirror, you talk to yourself and you talk to your own image actually, right? That is called intrapersonal communication. So intrapersonal communication are having three concepts basically. So the beliefs that we have are we can say the reflection or our own reflection to clarify something is actually the intrapersonal communication. And there are three concepts in the interpersonal communication. One is the self concept, means self awareness, that who you are as a person. And the belief means that the orientation, that um, what is true, what is false, whether you can make a difference between the true and the false, or what is the perspective, or what is your perspective. I mean, how you receive things, how you perceive things. So people have different perspectives as well. When they are talked about something very religious, तो कुछ लोग उनको अजीब सा perspective होता है. Some are having very different perspective, some are having light perspective. तो उनके perspective पे depend करता है. So that is actually the belief or the self orientation. And the values is like you can value a right thing or a wrong thing, or your attitudes towards something. So these are actually the intrapersonal communication that show, that tells us who we are as a person, right? What are our beliefs and what are our values. This interpersonal communication can disturb this interpersonal communication. Why? When you talk to the people, you have a different perspective about idea, and he comes with a different mentality. So when you work for a same forum, you can have differences in perspectives, and you can have fights, you can have other things, okay? But there is always a way out, and there is always a solution for the problems. We will be talking about the barriers of communication as well, and those barriers will be mainly depending on the intra and the interpersonal communication. So the interpersonal communication, it takes place within or among the people. I mean, like when there are two persons, so talking to one another is interpersonal communication. When there are so many people who talk to one another, that is called also called interpersonal communication. And it is done with the use of or different media. I mean, like face-to-face communication, it can be telephonic, it can be anything, right? But it is interpersonal, and they share some personal characteristics, some social roles, and some social relationships. For example, I'm talking to you people, so we are having an interpersonal communication. I am sharing my own personal role or social role, that is, I'm a teacher. So I teach because I'm sharing this personal role through teaching, and you are listening to me, so you are sharing your role, that is your students. So when you do not listen to me because you aren't my students, so that is actually when we behave in a particular way, when we talk in a particular way, we actually share our social roles and relationships or characteristics and things like that. But it is not in case of intrapersonal, because intrapersonal is limited to us. These are the thoughts and the ideas that we have, these are the beliefs and the concepts about ourselves. I hope it is clear for today. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Who is the CR? Kindly share your phone number
I'm the CR, ma'am. Please stop the
with me
recording,
in
ma'am.
the chat. Okay. I'll stop the recording. I'm sorry. You can share your phone number in this
Yes, ma'am. I'm sharing.